Hello, everyone. It seems like everybody wanted to go get a nice quick glimpse of Raj and Anatoly for the first time. But super excited to be here. This is actually crazy. Lots of us at Solana Labs have actually never met each other either. So we've been spending the past few days just hanging out and getting to know each other. And then yesterday, the registration kicked off, and it was really cool to start meeting the people that I thought wouldn't be as social as they actually are. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was just people aren't as antisocial as I thought in this space. So it's been pretty incredible. So welcome to Why Solana, Developer's Perspective. When I was first asked to do this, I thought it was kind of weird. I was like, I'm the most biased person in this company to talk about Why Solana. That's actually part of my job. So I decided to bring in kind of a little unique collection of people. We have Bartosz Lipinski, Solana Labs, previously in the TradFi. We have Irvin Cardena from Open Era, and then we have Ian and Dylan Magliano from Sabre. So I'm going to let everybody do a brief little introduction against the wishes of Bailey in here. So we're going to keep these short, and we'll go ahead, Bartosz.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. Bartosz, I've been on Solana for about a year. I primarily focus on building apps on top of Solana, and before that I worked on trading systems in Citadel and a few other financial institutions.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me here. I'm Irvin. I'm co-founder of Open Technologies, and we're building Open Era and a few other immersive reality tools and applications that leverage Solana blockchain. And previous to that, I founded a Bitcoin startup back in 2012, worked at Goldman Sachs in strategic blockchain technologies, and a few other things across various blockchains that you know, like Polkadot, Harmony, Polygon, and also received grants from Chainlink and other projects.
Hey guys, my name is Dylan. I'm working on Sabre, which is a decentralized exchange on Solana, focusing on stable swaps of assets. I was also working on Metaplex, which is the NFT protocol in Solana. Before that, was working in fintech, worked as a product manager at Ohikoi, which is a crypto exchange, and before that was doing tokenized securities on Ethereum.
And hi, I'm Ian. I was an EVM dev before this. I built a big AMM on Celo called Ubiswap, and I was also working at a fintech company called Pipe. We were doing lending, but yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. So I think we're just going to kick this off. I think one of the most, the number one thing I wanted to do with this is why I brought people like Irvin and Sabre, Ian and Dylan from Sabre, is because they come from different blockchains. The number one question kind of that came to my mind whenever I was putting this together was that, like, what was the original kind of moment for each of you guys to propel you into diving into Solana? Like, I know coming from TradFi, Bartosz might have a little bit of a different situation here, but like as blockchain developers, it seems that it's not always the easiest thing to like change your mind and switch to something completely different. Obviously, fast, cheap, secure, like blah blah blah. But there's obviously lots of different nuances and reasons here. So, Bartosz, did you want to give an answer to this since you're from the traditional finance world?
I mean, I can just say why, I guess in general, from my perspective, why I picked Solana instead of other blockchains. So primarily when I think about like building trading systems, like throughput and latency and how quickly you can get out of the orders that you have in the market. And at that time, like at the specific time, usually it's around the cancellation is when the throughput and latency matters. I think we are still not there yet with getting like an actual like TradFi market makers migrating to Solana, but it's extremely important to have a plan how you would get there. And based on like my talk with like Anatoly before I started, it's like I believe it's possible.
Yeah, so we kind of talked before this though, and I know Irvin was going to also mention some things around like the traditional finance world, but like how is Solana like fast and efficient enough right now to run what Anatoly would basically say running like the NASDAQ on Solana? Are we there yet to be able to do that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Irvin. So like,
Bartosz, you're one of the core developers, so I can chime in right after you.
Sure. I think from the cancellation perspective, it's tricky. Just because like how you communicate with the validator is there's no like easy way for the market makers to actually like guarantee that their cancellations will hit the specific time. So I think there's still a couple of things that need to happen. I think this startup called Jito is thinking about it, how it could be approached, and like market makers that are building on Solana are thinking about it quite a bit as well. Like Susquehanna and Chicago Trading Company, I think they are doing interesting things with the validators to figure out how they can actually get out of the markets, which is the most critical aspect, at least from my perspective, that people that are looking at like NASDAQ like don't think about, because they're like, it's like executing orders, but executing orders is actually less important than canceling them.
Yeah, so there's a huge misconception around like the blockchain world. I think every blockchain will pitch you saying we have 1 million TPS, transactions per second, right? But in the world of finance or overall, TPS is not the only thing that matters. It's fast finality, right? Because as Bartosz was saying, was that you want the transaction to have complete finality, right? You don't want to have uncertainty for milliseconds or a large number of seconds. And so I think we're getting there, but definitely I would say from that angle that Solana is one of the blockchains that is pushing towards mainstream adoption. For us, that was one of the key things. When we spoke to Anatoly and Raj, that was the key thing. And so that's good and all. And I honestly asked, well, how are you going to achieve this? And they kind of gave us a rundown. And you guys have already seen this happen and play out. And so, as you're building a product or you're a technologist, the technology itself matters, and in Solana the technology is there. But also, how is the technology being adopted by the entire world? Because essentially you're building a product and you want your product to be used across the entire world. And so that's one of the things that I would say, expanding upon what Bartosz said.
yeah. So is that just circling back, since I kind of distracted away from that? So what was the first, like, what brought you into as OpenAera? Like, how did you jump from Polygon and all the other blockchains that you were working on, which the list is actually quite long, but to make the jump to Solana?
Yeah. So, wag me. I think that's a term. It's like we're all gonna make it. I think we all have to be friends in this ecosystem. And firstly, my team and I, Up and Dive, we work with a few different blockchains. So we work with Polygon. We love those guys. We love Harmony. I'm a Substrate Academy fellow, which is the framework for Polkadot, and also I was part of Polka House. Shout out to them. And we decided to build a product early this year, and so we came up with OpenDive, which focuses on immersive reality tech, and we really wanted to bring our technology and connect it to blockchain, and so on. So we were looking for this kind of home. We had worked on like Chase mentioned, Polygon was one of them. Harmony, we did Avalanche and stuff like that, and SBF pitched us Solana and Serum. Serum over there. We love Serum. And so we were like, okay, we've done so many hackathons, so many projects, a few alphas. Sam was like, come check out the DeFi hackathon. There were like 2 weeks left.
Yeah.
And so Sean, my co-founder, and I were like, okay, do we want to do another hackathon? Because we had said, like, we're done with hackathons. Let's build. Like, for long term, we're like, fine, let's do it. We get there, and I would say that it was like, documentation was bad. Like I told Bartosz, like it was horrible. I was like, how do I get started? I had to review it. Paul X blog was there. And so as someone who's trying to build a startup, a product, and going towards a DAO, like I said, one of the core things is technology, right? And what I truly valued when I learned about Solana and I talked to the team, and I told you was that they're trying to innovate outside of other blockchains. Because if you look at the space, there's a whole bunch of EVM-compatible blockchains, right? So what's the innovation there? Is there a minor tweak in terms of how the transactions are propagated? Is it the validator set? And so it's something completely different, right? And I would tell you that it takes a lot of grit to build something from scratch, right? Because you're jumping into the unknown. And so I've personally been there, and my co-founder, Sean, we're trying to build like robots and stuff like that, and it's like tough. And so I valued that. tremendously. The other part that we also value within Solana early on was that the ecosystem was growing and they had a plan on how to create these tools. So we came in there and we said, okay, so the wallets weren't there. This is like March, April, May, right? And Bartosz like, you get them done. And so we assessed this and stuff like that. And at the end, it was a combination of, I would say, three things, right? The technology, the ecosystem, the community is growing there. And there's one third one, which I'll leave it out there. But these are key things to look into when you come into Solana or perhaps other ecosystems, right? Technology, ecosystem, community, how fast they're growing. And the third one is probably quite obvious, but I think I'd like to touch upon that later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I think the community aspect of it's like obviously part of my job is to speak with developers, and like I started 6 months ago, and like my DMs went from like 5 like DMs a day to I probably wake up to about 80 a day. 90% of those are people, sometimes for FANG developers, being like, "Hey, I'm getting into this. Don't tell anybody, but like, where do I get started?" So like that community aspect it's actually been crazy for me to watch that happen. But I am like super interested to hear from Dylan and Ian about like what like you guys were building on Celo and ETH, and all of a sudden you're on Solana. So like how did that end up happening, or what drew you to it?
Yeah, maybe it's easier actually if Ian goes first.
Me. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what drew us to Solana initially for building, I guess, the curve of Solana was the low fees and the fast transaction time. So some more background on me. I've been involved in DeFi for a long time, like since the term came out, I guess, like in 2018. I was really involved in Ethereum like DeFi trading like since like March 2020. So like I saw the entire ecosystem grow like from before yield farming, like when DeFi TVL was like under $1 billion to like I guess where it is today. But yeah, from that curve was something that I used all the time, but it's very expensive because it's not like Uniswap where it's just X times Y equals K, which is already kind of expensive, but it's a little more complicated than that. And from that, like you're easily spending like maybe even like $50 per transaction, like as a cheap transaction to just swap between stables. But Curve is like a really good idea. It's a LP, or it's like an exchange where you don't have any impermanent loss. So it's like a good like risk-free rate of crypto. But we basically just wanted to like have that except cheaper, and so we didn't have to like pay tons of money whenever we wanted to like change between like USDC and USDT and across different exchanges. So that's why I got into the ecosystem in the first place. Why I stayed was because of the community. So like I think the Twitter community is just really good in Solana. It's like very motivating as a DeFi developer to just build when people are actually saying they like your product and they want you to keep building more products and keep just like growing the ecosystem out. And that's not something you really get easily in other chains, like trying to get like people to like rally behind you and like have a specific type of culture where people get excited about what you're building. So yeah, that's what I like about Solana. On top of that, there's a really good exchange support. So the support from like FTX and just like institutional stuff in general is really nice because then it's really easy for me to like get my friend to just put a bunch of like USDC into FTX US and just like withdraw it. But that's like not something you get on a lot of other chains. Like on other chains, like you might need to use a VPN. That's not like allowed. Like you're not supposed to be doing stuff like that. But like FTX has like actual like official support like in the US and also like every other country. So it's been really easy to integrate.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. So Saber actually was started. I guess the first version of Saber was like end of last year. That's part of the first Solana hackathon. So that's something that Ian and then our other co-founder Michael participated in. And yeah, back then though, like the developer experience of Solana and even just the ecosystem in general was just a lot less than it is now. And even when we like basically got back into working on Saber, which was like in April of this year. And the way that like I got involved with Solana, so yeah, I was working full time at a fintech startup that wasn't in crypto, but still just like really interested in crypto trading and also building on the side. And I was looking for like a fun project to do. Ended up just like randomly seeing a tweet from Raj one day. He was like, "Oh, like we're looking to incubate a project that is going to do like, or basically going to start like NFTs on Solana, which is the project that ended up being like called Metaplex." And so yeah, I like reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in working on this," and yeah, I ended up just like working on it part time. And yeah, I think one is just like meeting the Solana team. So like yeah, Raj Anatoly, people like Bartos as well. I think they just had like a very good vision of like how they see the Solana ecosystem growing like really fast, and how they can basically like create a niche amongst like all these other L1s. Yeah, as Ian was saying before, also like institutional support. So yeah, I was talking to some of the guys from like Alameda, from Jump, and yeah, honestly, just like felt inevitable that like Solana was going to become like a big chain for finance. But what the problem was at that point was just like there were not like very many DeFi protocols. I think back at that time, it was mainly like Radium, Serum, Orca. Yeah, I'm probably forgetting some other ones, but those were like the main like projects there. And there was like no like stable swap. And because like we already had this code that was written for the first Solana hackathon. And also just like seeing like Inside Curve is just like a very like foundational piece of DeFi. You can really build like everything on top of stable swaps. It's just like more efficient than a normal like stable coin to use. Yeah, just made a lot of sense. And so yeah, me and Ian like started working on that while we were still like part-time at our other job. Ended up finally quitting and going full-time on Solana in I think like July of this year. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. You were talking about like building and like the developer experience, which is like my job to fix. So just give me some time. But anyways, I look back at like Mango and Daffy and some of these guys, and I actually asked Daffy one day on Twitter. I was like, how the hell did you build Mango with literally docs and Pollex escrow tutorial? But people got it done. Like, I don't think that it was easy.
Yeah.
And then we also have a couple guys on Discord that I promised I wouldn't name by name here, and developer support that like kind of just one-off helped everybody get through a lot of this stuff. So that was like super cool. Did you have something to say, Irvin? Because
yeah, I think so. They talked really about DeFi, and one of the things that actually happens nowadays is that you want to have composability. Right, so you want to have Lego blocks coming together, and so L1s in general are pretty good for this. And so it was a matter of seeing, like they said, there were a lot of DeFi protocols coming over, and because Solana is an L1, composability is just much smoother. And so there's a multi-chain world. People are talking about composability also across these multi-chain ecosystems, but Solana had that in its sleeve, right?
yeah. So I had another question up here, which is why did you stay? But like now that I'm thinking about it, the kind of like all this kind of just ties together, and it's probably the reasons you came here are also the reasons you stayed, except for like the community part, which I think, again, I just have to note that it was really shocking to see how quickly that community grew. And like, I think the NFTs actually allowed non-developer participants to now like join DAOs, and like there's a whole nother level there, but we can talk about that another time. I
can talk about something about staying. So like I think when you and I like first like started working on Saber, we weren't like really thinking like, oh, like this is going to be like a huge project on Solana, at least in the beginning. Like a lot of it was so I think Ian kind of briefly mentioned on this. He was working on a lot of Celo stuff. And so like we were looking at like how can we like, basically make the Celo dollar bigger, and one of those ways was like, oh, we can build a stable swap on another L1 that like seems really promising. But I think like yeah, as soon as we started, like Ian posted a tweet on like the Saber Twitter. It was called Stable Swap back then, and it was just like I forgot what it said, but it was just like something random, and it just got like tons of like hype. Like everyone was like really excited about it. I think like SBF tweeted it or retweeted it, and we were just like, oh wow, like Solana seems like a lot bigger than we thought it was. And yeah, from there, like I don't know, basically just like kind of went all in on Solana after that.
Yeah, it's not that it was I guess Solana was big. It's that the community members were really active and involved in trying to like get the ecosystem to be bigger. And I mean, even within Solana Labs, like the employees of Solana Labs and like even Anatoly and Raj themselves, like they encourage us to build on top of Solana. Like Vitalik doesn't do that for you, people in Ethereum. So it just feels a lot more motivating that these people that are building this chain really want you guys to like succeed and grow the ecosystem out. So that's just been like really great.
I think another thing that was surprising, and I don't know if this happens on other chains, but you really have seen like somewhat direct and indirect competitors that you would consider competitors in this space actually helping each other out with code and like building in like this kind of open collaborative way. Obviously that utopia doesn't last forever as things get kind of a little more competitive down the line. But when you're kind of like have a trajectory that's like a hockey stick in terms of developer community and projects, like I feel like people were more willing to help each other. but maybe not again, like forever.
Yeah, I think so. Like they were saying, honestly, what's really exciting as a developer is that you really get to shape things bottom up, right? It's like the opportunity to do that. And like if you're thinking about coming to Solana, you're still pretty early. You know, like I became an advisor for Metaplex. I have a lot of NFTs and did a lot of NFT work, and it's kind of fascinating how I had the discussions about, you know, how do NFTs work on these other chains? Let's say EVM compatible, right? And then you see that kind of like being applied or implemented right there, right? And I had conversations with Jordan and Bartosz and that and taking place. But, you know, like getting a bit technical, for example, to discussing like NFTs on Solana or something. You know, when you look at like EVM compatible chains, the standard for NFTs, right, is at the business or social level, right? So an NFT is just a contract that you constantly deploy. On Solana, the concept of an NFT in even a Metaplex is a standard at the protocol level. It's on-chain that people use. So what does this mean? Well, this means that rather than you having to say, okay, you have OpenSea, then you have known origin, and you have this other marketplace, if you're a creator and you want to have royalties on the NFTs, on these EVM chains, all these, you know, quote-unquote marketplaces have to come into a business agreement for these royalties to take place. With Metaplex on Solana, that standard, that concept of royalties is already baked or built in on-chain. So the standard is already on the protocol, right? So it means that artists, when they come in, you know, and mint an NFT using, you know, using Metaplex storefront, and then they go and connect to a marketplace, the royalties are there, which is very different, right? And it's also very motivating for artists and creators to kind of have this. And so that's also something to consider when you look at, you know, coming in and being able to shape the ecosystem and make it better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we do all owe a lot of thanks to Mr. Bartosz Lipinski here for not sleeping for 2 months straight and helping build the Metaplex standard with Redacted J, Jordan, who I believe is probably sitting at the hacker house like he has been for the last 5 days straight. Yep. So we have about 15 minutes left, and like the more like exciting question that I wanted to ask, and I feel like everybody might have a different kind of answer here, and we'll start with Bartosz, is like, what's the thing that probably most excites you with Solana? Like, I think the NFT world kind of blew up. Like that excites some people. I'm personally, like, just to give a brief opinion, like I've been excited about gaming for probably the last 3 years in crypto. I know a lot of people from the finance world, they're excited about DeFi, so super curious to hear what everybody else, like as a developer, is most excited of, like whether it's like what's going to be built or like how it's going to change the world or basically anything. So Bartosz, what are you thinking here? What's the most exciting thing about the next 6 months to a year on Solana?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it's like maybe not the most exciting things, but like 3 things. So the first one, like everyone is talking about games, and we have been talking with Arvin for weeks, months about games in general. Great team, tons of ideas, and we are basically thinking, how can we build it into a standard that's on-chain, that games can become interoperable. And it's very tricky because you need to balance the composability of the games with the freedom for the game designers. So it's even harder than like composing DeFi, because the DeFi protocols like somewhat agree on, like, for example, what money is, where not games sometimes don't. The other thing is, outside of games, is seeing more collaboration from traditional finance. I think seeing what PIF did is like, from the outside, it looks very, very straightforward. But if you worked at any of those financial institutions, from the inside of those institutions, you would argue that something like that, it's almost impossible, where you have multiple market makers and investment banks and exchanges actually sitting at the same table and exchanging technology. Where, like, for those people, like when I was working at Citadel, we were not even able to contribute like open source software from our personal accounts during personal time. And them contributing them and actually talking is very interesting. So like being in Chicago and having multiple people come to the office from those firms and actually talk what they are going to build, it's like just crazy. We'd have like Jump, Susquehanna, CTC, in the same room talking what they're building is just crazy.
And so, like, in traditional, just real quick, like in traditional finance, in case some people don't know, is like the closed source is where the money comes from, right? Like, there's no such thing as sharing and open source. It's like kind of the antithesis of what we're all doing right now. So it has to be crazy to come from like traditional finance into crypto. So Irvin, what about you, man? Like, what excites you the most about the next 6 months to a year here on Solana?
I think a lot of things. Gaming is one, and we've been talking about gaming for a long, long time. And standards, on-chain standards are a critical thing for interoperability because, people think about the metaverse, and right now you're pitched like a high-level interoperability, or they say, there's this game A and game B, and then you can share assets. But then you look deep down, and how does sharing assets take place? Where there's a business agreement that game A will allow game B to integrate. And so is that really interoperability? I'd say no. Right? It's interoperability at the business level, not at the protocol level. You can quote me on that. But so that's the huge thing for us. And like our background overall has been in immersive reality and even robotics. I've been in the space like since 2012. One particular use case that I haven't seen like really take off is things related to data and IoT, the Internet of Things. And we're working on research papers, we publish academic papers, and we did comparison of like architectures, IoT architectures with Solana and other chains too, right? And so when you start thinking about what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, you look at 5G, great, right? I think the US is just figuring out 5G. Actually, we're already researching 7G in other places, and people are deploying 6G, right? And so when you have these interconnected devices and you have cell towers nearby, you have all this collection of data. So what can we do? How can we provide provenance? And I think that's something exciting that needs to be explored more. And I'm looking forward to that in the near future. Besides that, I think anything goes. Like DeFi and new models are yet to come. So you guys should keep an eye for that.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about how you talked about kind of being able to be so early and build this up and like have so much influence, and like I think that like somebody brand new could come into Solana, a new project, and completely just shift everything in one direction just because it is still so small and we are so early. It won't take much to influence like the way that things are moving, and I'm not so sure how I feel about Internet of Things. I don't know if I want my refrigerator habits on the blockchain, but I'm just kind of joking. So Dylan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm super excited about just seeing more composability. Like when we first started working in Solana, like I said, like there weren't that many DeFi primitives. Now we're getting to the point where I think like pretty much every like, basic primitive exists out there, and it is of like high quality. So yeah, really cool to see. Like just even speaking in terms of Saber, like in the past like months or even past couple of weeks, I've seen like a lot of like new projects come out that are building on top of Saber, doing really cool things, and then now new protocols can come and build on top of those things. And so yeah, I think for like the next like few months, just going to see a lot more like really interworking projects. What's really cool about being here in Lisbon and working at that hacker house is like, just like meeting other teams, and they're like, oh yeah, we were thinking of building this thing on top of Saber, and we can help them out and stuff. And so yeah, just super exciting to see like more composability throughout DeFi and gaming, NFTs, just everything.
Cool. Yeah, just you mentioned in the hacker house again reminded me is just so everybody knows. Apparently, the Mango team has put up some bounties over there. So like, if you want to go hack and build some stuff and then hit some of those bounty awards, that like it's free. It's fair game.
Yeah, there's a few of them. There's like Drift Protocol,
Heroes.
Hero. Yeah, I'm bad with names.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. There's more than 100,000.
We have slippers. The slipper award.
Oh, and the slippers. Yeah.
So Ian, you're the last one. So like, what's most exciting to you in the next 6 months to a year here on Solana?
Yeah. For me, I think the most important thing is trustlessness. So like on Ethereum, right, or any EVM chain, you can basically verify the contract source and know exactly what you're running. And on top of that, like there's a community of people that know Solidity and can basically say like if there's going to be a rug pull or not. But basically, since Solana doesn't really have a system for that, people really have to rely on like other people to say that something's good or not. But what this does is it restricts people from innovating, right? Like if you think about all the big like developments that have happened outside, or like in the Ethereum ecosystem, a lot of them come from these like anon, proton mail, like email addresses that just like post some random white paper that like they like create really cool things, but like they don't want to say who they are. But I want to see a culture like that develop in Solana, and for that we need people to like open source their code and verify the contracts, and have like a centralized repository, not centralized, but like a repository where like people can actually like verify the contracts very easily and see what's going on. But yeah, and with that, like my favorite project in Ethereum was Basis Cash. So it's like a Basis protocol like clone. They like took the Basis protocol white paper. It's like a stable coin, and they built it in Ethereum and just like launched as an anon team. But like that could never really exist in Solana today, just because like people would not trust something like that. So I just want to like see an environment where people could just like launch a project like that, build it, and put it out there, and people can just like use it. And from that, I would see like I think the TVL of Solana would skyrocket after that, because then you just have all these like forks of random projects that just all like keep building and keep pushing out new things, just like we see with Metaplex, right? Like NFTs only really got big in Solana because Metaplex made it really easy for someone to create like a relatively trustworthy NFT where you're interacting with a candy machine contract. With Phantom, you can even see like if you're actually going to like get all your funds taken from you, and from that, people are able to just like go into it and like not have to worry about like losing all their money. But I want to see something like that for just DeFi in general, and I think contract verification is like the first step, but governance is also another thing. But yeah, just trustlessness in general, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, I have a somewhat, just since I'm not like typically building on a regular basis, I have a little bit different of a perspective on what I'm excited about, and like I think everybody kind of is probably also in agreement with us, I hope, is that like streamlining the developer onboarding and developer experience. Like obviously it's been a huge challenge since day one. There was Docs and there was PawX. Now we're starting to see all these developers. Like I just saw somebody, I think his name is Brian Frail. He just created a whole full like Medium or like Hack.2 or Dev.2 article on PDAs. Like people were going and finding all these gaps that have been confusing, and they're now like writing content. And like originally I was out there trying to find developers to help produce content. Now it's almost becoming a full-time job to like just capture that content and find it, because people are just like coming onto Solana and making things. And like I know I wanted to kind of, since we have a few minutes left, one of the big ones here, I don't know if Armani's here, but like he is doing the Lord's work out there building Anchor. And now it sounds like, I see Ian tweeting about this all the time, that crates are coming out left and right. And like, I mean, honestly, like I think from most likely from the ETH community, like that's going to be like the go-to. Like there's, I don't think we're at version 1 yet on Anchor, are we? Like we don't have a fully do we know when that's coming? The fully audited like V1 version? I think Armani gave me like a month or two like kind of time frame when then that would actually happen.
Yeah.
So, but I did think like, just so we do have some time, like what are your thoughts on that, Ian? Like in terms of like Anchor, like you guys started out Saber, V1, straight Solana, Rust, and then part of that's still that, but you've also built like some components.
Yeah, so the core Saber contract, like the actual swap, is not written in Anchor, but every single other program we've ever used is built on Anchor. But why Anchor is really important is that so in Solana, right, you basically have to deal with these like raw like byte arrays to do everything. So you don't actually know what you're like calling. You have to like know what program you're calling in order to like understand what's going on. But in Ethereum, it's not that the case. In Ethereum, you have these things called ABIs, like application binary interface, where you can actually like see what's going on in a contract. So that's also important for this like trustlessness, like auditability stuff, where you actually can see what's going to happen whenever you do something with a contract. But yeah, that's why I think Anchor is really important, and just onboarding a lot of people, not just for like developer like speed, but also for this like auditability thing where people can actually like integrate and see what's going on.
Yeah, super excited to see this happen. Like I know there's some Anchor maxis out there now that don't even like want to even look at like native Solana and Rust.
Yeah,
so it's actually funny.
Yeah.
So we got a couple minutes left. Did anybody have any final thoughts on like obviously we're talking about why Solana developers perspective. So Irvin, did you have any final thoughts?
Oh yeah, so I think I had that last third point.
Yeah.
So for us, it was very strategic, honestly, coming to Solana. And I mentioned the tech and the community one thing, but personally as a founder and someone who's been since 2012, one of the most important thing are the people, right? And this matters because you're essentially, as a founder or someone creating a product, you're gonna dedicate your entire life or your entire weeks or weekends to really building this ecosystem, right? So ideally, what you want is you want people that, one, have a strong conviction and vision for the product that they're building, right? You want two, you want people that are eating their own dog food. So not just folks who are saying, we're building this, and you ask them, are you writing the code? Are you actually using the product? And you don't find that a lot, right? And three, you want people who are going to be there as you build a product in their ecosystem. And this is what we really found. Like when we talked to Anatoly, Raj, Tristan, who's not here, was a key person, and Bartosz, when I talked to him, and now Jordan, and Chase, people are key, and this is what we see in these folks. In all honesty, I think I told Chase earlier, I would say that Chase is one of the top, developer advocates out there. Because if you go on Discord, you go on Twitter, he's out there. And so people do matter. And so if you're a founder or looking to create a product, you'll find those key things amongst the people that are building, and those that are coming also in building Solana as a whole, as an ecosystem.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that as well. I mean, I've talked to several ecosystem teams, I guess, on different L1s, and I think the level of support that Solana gives is just way beyond anyone else. And yeah, really excited to be here for that reason.
100%.
Yeah, well, we're kind of rounding it off here. Thank you guys for coming again, Bartosz, Lipinski, Irvin. Now I'm forgetting all the names that I was kind of memorizing as I was coming here. Cardenas, and Dylan and Ian Macliano. So thank you guys so much for coming. It was great to have all these different perspectives up here. And that's it for our talk. So thank you, and we'll catch you around here.
Peace.